this is one of those topics that is, when I really think about it, is mind blowing. Like to think back to when I was a kid and, in school there were, food allergies. And so I knew one kid who had to have an extra chocolate milk or something for probably some diabetic thing or whatever. But it was unheard of. We all ate our gluten, we ate our stuff, whatever. And now, of course, it's just this pandemic. Same thing, dementia. It was once in a while you'd be at a family gathering or know somebody and they got, grandma or grandpa who's just kind of not there. And now today, as I think about the reality of the culture and the norm that we so often talk about, it seems that it is the norm to expect that, yes, your parents are going to get dementia and you are too. And when you're at the gathering now and there's the 85-year-old person who's just all lively, it's like this, oh, wow, the special person over here who's still with it cognitively, we expect dementia. I don't even know if people are scared of it anymore overall because it's just kind of the norm.
That's a good intro. It's a good way to bring it up because your perspective is exactly right and exactly wrong.
Okay.
So when you talk to probably the group who are most of our listeners, in the middle-aged kind of a group, we've got parents that are aging. And right now, if you talk to the 60-year-old, 65-year-old, they will say the number one fear is dementia. It is now, people fear that more than cancer. So cancer has been the great fear medically. I don't want to get cancer, forever. And in cancer needs to be the topic of another show. Today, we're talking about dementia and the fact that it is what people fear the most because they now see, because it's so common, everybody has an uncle or a parent and they now see it. And so I will talk to those kids who are 40, 50, 60 and say, I will not go through that. Help me to do whatever so that I don't put my family through that because it's cruel. It's just an unimaginable situation where this person is now no longer there. So mom, as we knew her, is gone, but there's this shell of a person that we have to take care of.
What I'm tuned into the vernacular that now you and I are just over, or I just turned 50, you're just over 50. And that's kind of the thing of, yeah, I know I'm 50, can't think straight anymore. There's that early stage dementia. We joke about it, but that was, again, that vernacular didn't exist when we were kids because it just wasn't that common. Now it is kind of, we're speaking ourselves into the expectation that that is a
Norm.
possibility. And this came back from the, however many weeks ago, what magic pill would you take? Or if you had a magic pill, what would you address? And what I just showed you a minute ago, I read it off. Jan Johnson, that's my wife's aunt. So on Facebook, she posted that. So that would mean I know she must be 50, 60, she must be 70, somewhere just over 70-ish or
And
something like that.
guaranteed she's got a friend or a family member.
Mom, her mom. So my
Okay.
wife's grandmother is 99,
Uh-huh.
trying to make it to 100 right now. And she's pretty there. I mean, she's not, where she was and stuff, but she's not, totally off, but
Well,
they're seeing it.
yeah. And even so, once you get over 85, you're in what we call the elder. So these are, even though everybody kind of knows somebody who knows somebody that's in their mid 90s or something, it really isn't that common, right? Like after 85, the death rate significantly sharpens. And the people who are the docs in the longevity crowd and like Peter Attia and people like that say we can live to 100 vibrantly. Okay, but even right now, if your brain is really with it at 95, you're probably not mowing your lawn and doing your gardening and going skiing and hiking and things like that. Maybe you could be, but through my lens, I would say, you know what? If I'm well and skiing, we always use skiing as the example here in Colorado because that's pretty aggressive. At 85, and we've had a few patients like that, that's my success
Well,
bar.
we see them
That's,
constantly. I mean, every
yeah,
time you're out on the slopes, and we were just out, and you see
the
a
old
handful of
guy,
them
and it's like,
just swooshing
yeah,
down with a smile
I
on
want
their
to be that
face.
guy.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then everything after that is icing on the cake. But even at 85, you don't want to wind up, with a stroke. And then from 85 to 95, you're in the nursing home with dementia and stuff like that. So, but I think the guy who's well enough to be skiing at 85 is less likely to be the guy with dementia. at whatever age along
I
the
mean,
way.
that's exactly where I was going to go is, again, not to make everything down to physical fitness, but that, again, that cutoff that I see, that we have this subconscious myth, I believe, my experience, the subconscious feeling in our intelligent Western,
Yeah,
culture, that we can be Jabba the Hutt, and yet our mind works, and the
right.
person that sits
Okay.
there and creates something brilliant, and their body is just toast, but their brain is just working great, and it's
It's a
impossible.
fallacy. Yeah.
If you know somebody, or you are that person whose body is an absolute wreck, and yet you're still producing good work, then my statement would be, how much gooder could it be, or how much longer could you be doing, will you be able to do gooder work
That's right. Or
if
how
you
lucky are
are
you?
if you are well. Yeah, again,
Or
not to make it all fitness, because somebody's going to go,
no.
well, I know this guy, man, he used to run a marathon every week and he had a heart attack, or he
Yeah.
did get dementia. Exceptions everywhere, but by far and large, if you have somebody who's physically fit, able, well, their mind is going to go along with it, and we don't see that many people who have a mind doing well in later years that is in physical disrepair.
Sure. That, and we had talked earlier about, okay, cutting right to the chase, to protect your mind, to invest in your mind. Is it all going to go through the physical lens? And no, right? It's one of the pieces, to be sure. Was it last time? No, last time we did adrenal fatigue, but then the time before that, we talked to the physically fit guy. What's your physical identity? And those people who have a physical identity of Jabba the Hutt are going to increase their chances of losing their mind.
Right.
That's how you opened up our show here. You said it's mind blowing. In fact, it is
It's mind
numbing,
stopping.
mind stopping.
Okay, here, I got a question for you on the other piece too. We should probably do a show on Parkinson's, but I'm going to use that as a lead in,
Okay.
because Parkinson's, you were at a conference, there's a functional medicine doc, I think, there that developed Parkinson's and had the decline.
So,
Am I telling the story wrong?
you're telling the story wrong, but the doc who wrote the story is
Uh,
Norman Doidge, who wrote The Brain's Way of Healing and The Brain That Heals Itself are his two kind of main works. And then told the story and posted an interview with a guy who walked himself out of
okay,
Parkinson's.
that was
Yeah.
okay. So I don't know how far we want to go into Parkinson's. I mean,
No, I would deviate
well,
back from that.
Well, let me come into it then, because what you said to some degree is not to we need to talk about that specifically, but within Parkinson's, there is some aspect. He walked himself out, that it's a disease of, what did you say? Of of not moving.
Oh, yeah.
Like if you have somebody,
Okay.
instead, because what you do is, you have this thing and you start protecting yourself, and you're not moving. And we need to do the opposite and work our way out of it.
Right.
It may not be totally fair. Okay. So, but it's my lead into over here. What is the aspect of dementia that happens
Okay.
because of the lack of cognitive workout?
Okay. Well, let's talk about dementia through the lens of Alzheimer's, because that is the most common one.
I don't even know the difference.
Okay. So right, with dementia in and of itself, and what makes Alzheimer's dementia versus Lewy body dementia versus cardiovascular dementia versus, if somebody gets an infection and they have meningitis and things like that. So let's just not go into the subsets of those kind of things, because then that would be for me or the doctor or the neurologist to try to say, okay, what's the subset, and then how are we going to treat
So whatever level of manifestation of a cognitive decline.
Yeah, let's go with
Okay.
that. And let's also say we need to define our terms, because everybody, like you said, talks about, well, oh my goodness, I forget where I put the keys, or where I parked the car, or what I had for dinner last night, or those kind of things. And it is true that people can forget things. And that doesn't mean that oh my gosh, you're going to have dementia.
Right.
So, and most of that, to be quite honest with you, is just what you choose to pay attention to.
Thank you. I'm writing notes on that. So can I bring that out? Because I have, it started to become a kind of a joke that I don't like, of me being the absent-minded professor.
Right.
But all that is, it means I have you could say a personality style, or a chosen propensity. I like it. I like to be distracted. I like to be paying attention to things. I like to be thinking about ideas and thoughts. And I'm thinking about something often when you're sitting there talking to me, I'm looking right at your face, and then you finish and I go, say that again. I was not, because I was thinking over here. And we could pawn that off as, oh, that's my propensity. It's also my choice, because I chose to think about that thing.
Yeah.
So is my short-term memory? No, I'm just choosing to think about other things. There's a
Right.
lot of things I don't care to remember. I just don't care. And I don't have to now
Well, I
because
was
it's on
just
my
going to
phone.
say, your wife is going to know that about you and say, Kevin, pay
Pay
attention.
attention.
That's right.
And I can
And
make that
when you
choice.
do,
Yeah,
you will remember.
absolutely.
Okay. Now, then there will come a time when somebody says, my wife is telling me that we went through the, hey, pay attention kind of thing, and I still forgot.
Sure.
Okay. So this is going to be the area of subjective cognitive impairment. So the first layer is subjective. So it's not even measurable, but we call it SCI. And there's a degree. So in the clinic, to every person, I will ask this question: in your own opinion, is your memory worse than what it was? In your own
Well,
opinion, is your,
you're 52. Is yours?
oh, yes, I would
Really?
say, yeah. Like I
Why?
can remember, well, I don't know. It troubles me. And
I
we
don't know
also
that I
know my
believe.
telomeres are off and some,
I don't know
here's,
that I believe you.
well, here's my example. When I was in high school, college, there were moments when somebody would say, I'm going to give you my phone number. And I would look him in the eye and say, just tell me, I'll remember. I would never, ever, ever say that right now. Even if
Okay.
I may go
Keep
memorize it,
going because I'm
memorize.
going to argue against you.
Okay.
Yes.
And then in college, there would be, I would approach a class that I'm interested in, not one I don't like. And I would say, I know I'm going to remember this stuff and get an A.
Okay.
And now okay, I think I could do that, but it would take me more time.
Okay.
It would take me more effort.
Yeah.
So that's where my subjective cognitive impairment.
Okay. And I shouldn't say I have an argument, but I am prone to think that you're missing a reality back then. So how many years
Okay.
ago was that?
30.
30. How many things have happened that fill up your mind? One, since then. And two, how many more things do you have to keep track of today than you did back then?
Right. So back to our example of distractedness.
I'd say it's dramatic. So if you
Yeah.
have this much, I'm holding my hands up for people listening to the audio. If you had a foot of bandwidth, I'm going to make a
Right.
stupid analogy. If you had a foot of bandwidth back then, you had 10 things in there to remember. And so tell
Right.
me a phone number. I'm only thinking of 10. I have very little going on in my life today, 30 years later. Wife, kids, finances, business. You've got, instead of 10 things, you have 100 things in there that you're keeping track on, that you're balancing, that you're juggling, whatever. And so somebody gives you a phone number and it goes in and goes, I don't even make an attempt to. I'm going to put it on my phone. I don't even try to have that memory. But the things that I can cognitively grab onto and access, I'm going to look back at that 30-year-old and says, man, I can remember all this. I'm going to say, shut up. You have so little to keep track of relatively. To me, I'm going to argue and wonder, I wonder if your brain and memory and ability is higher overall.
Okay.
The capacity.
That
That's the word you use.
Yes. And let's keep that idea going, because what time does, and the reason why, generally speaking, an 8-year-old can learn Chinese better than you can. They can memorize a Bible verse faster than you can. They just can. Because what's happened between 8 and 48, if you think of the brain as a bush, is pruning. Because between 8 and 48, I chose not to learn Chinese. So my language developing process got pruned, and that whole, because I pruned it over in a different direction to where I could think about these other things with greater adeptness. So one of the reasons why I may not be able to remember a phone number better is because I try to remember these other things better. And my brain has, and I have chosen to foster it down that pathway. So now people are starting to see the complexity of what's going on there. So if I'm pruning my brain within the context of Jabba the Hutt, that is a less good job pruning process. Meaning exercise, the physical piece, the BDNF, things we talked about 2 shows ago of how to fertilize the brain, exercise being one of them, sleep being one of them, all of that. As in my case, I went through 2 kind of careers. I became a German specialist. I learned German. And then I became a medical specialist over here. And like you say, I also had to learn how to do taxes and be married and raise a kid and run a business and all of that.
Yeah.
So I'll give you that.
Well, give me a little more, or I want to ask a little more, because if I take that, if you take the kid and you say, if you're going to teach this, what age did you say?
8.
Teach them Chinese.
Yeah.
And they're going to have an hour class per day.
Yep.
And their propensity to learn Chinese. And we're going to come over here and give you an hour per day. And you say that because of the pruning and whatever, you are going to be less efficient, with less capacity. But then I want to take that. I want to give the third option is put you in prison today and absolutely stop your life. stop it. You have no family contact.
Yeah.
You're in
Okay.
solitary confinement, and give you that same hour of learning to no more, but just an hour where I'm going to say your focus and capacity has got to increase
Okay.
significantly. I don't know if it's as much as that 8-year-old, but significantly,
Right.
just because we took everything else off of your plate.
Okay. Yeah. I think both are true in this case.
Well, it's another integer that I don't want, that I feel like is unfair.
That's right. We give people the grace and the credit of saying there is a lot going on in our lives today.
I'm just going to question the black and white, or the polarization of saying that of where your memory is now, as opposed to 30 years ago when you could remember that number, because I'm going to say, man, I bet your access to so much that you've experienced and so much you're keeping track of today is so significantly
this
more.
Is the concept of neuroplasticity, right? That I, over here, where I may have pruned off a language branch over here, I've grown twice as much branches over here. So the overall robustness of the bush, we could argue is better. And in the past, and many people still would wrongly think, so whoever's listening to this, you don't, I lost all my brain cells in college, I drank too much, and these kind of things. It's like, well, if between college and now you were Jabba the Hutt and you kept drinking and you didn't do anything, then yeah, you are losing them.
Yeah.
But if you are investing into your brain, you are growing a brain. And compared to your 8-year-old brain over here, this branch is going to be much better. And yeah, I chose to let go of Chinese. So a little bit of the bothness there.
I want to ask, can I ask about investing in the brain? If I am, I'll use me. So if I'm me and I'm eating what? Can I, that's right. And I'm eating the way that I am. Let's say that I'm eating well. Okay. So today I am eating well today. I'm sleeping well today. Overall, I'm sleeping well today. I think my stress level, as far as worry, anxiety, is better than in previous years. It can always be better. That's probably my biggest issue. But let's say I'm doing these things well. I'm exercising well, which I am. I'm doing that. So I'm doing all these things well. And yet I'm going to have to make this up. I have a very monotonous or consistent life, very not brain
stimulating.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to be.
Let's say your job is fairly rote.
Yeah. Consistent, monotonous, not stressing, not
rhythmic, because there's a goodness to rhythm, but let's say the job is not stimulating.
Okay. And let's say I don't have a lot of new things happening, a lot of whatever, especially
if I travel, you're not reading a new book, you're not having a debate with somebody.
It'd be better if I didn't have so many kids. Let's say I have one kid, or I should be old enough to have kids out of the house.
So you're shaming me for only having 3 kids.
Yes.
I'm hearing you.
Anyways, so it's not that, let's go with stimulating. Yeah. My brain's not.
Then keep going.
Well,
you're right.
Okay. So over here, because I wonder and hope that my life that does have, with all the kids, there's something new every day. You and I both are at the state of new business stuff constantly. I mean, every day we have something new that we are choosing to participate in. And by proxy of being business owners, and with the economy and whatever, things change and you have to mortgage that, I assume. And because, my gosh, we're reading, we're trying to learn, we're talking about ideas. I am hoping that I am stimulating my brain in a way, as opposed to the former example that we gave. And so and that's where I was going with Parkinson's. If it has some correlation to a lack of movement that does dementia, even with good health and wellness, fitness, skiing, that I can still have my brain in a place.
Let me cut to the chase. Okay. The number one food for the brain. When people say, how do I stimulate my brain? Absolute number one is novelty.
Wow.
You didn't expect that one, probably.
No, but it's a duh. It's a duh question.
Once you start thinking about it, that's right. So, people say, should I work crosswords? Should I do Sudoku? Should I do this? Should I do that? And so we jumped ahead a little bit.
Because if I'm doing Sudoku every single day, then whatever part of my brain that's doing that is doing it every single day. It's not new. Right. At some point, it's going to plateau. I would think
you're going to get better at Sudoku.
But am I going to
get better at life? Not necessarily.
Well, but is my body going to acclimate and plateau to that? Like I'd be better to do it. And now let's do something different.
Well, yeah, I don't know if you were there, but yesterday we were talking about pull-ups, and I've been stuck at 15.
Oh yeah.
Because and even just my body acclimated to 15, and I can do 15. And even if I go a couple of weeks, I can still do 15.
Yeah.
But to go to 18 just is like this plateau thing. And what I need to do is cross train
Yeah.
and not just keep. Anyway, let's come back to the brain. So I'm going to come to the novelty thing by going through this. So SCI, subjective cognitive impairment, and then MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And now your family knows. And it's your wife always is going to be the first to know usually, or a business partner, somebody that's really like our friend James has a business partner and there's that, that issue, but the family knows and they're like, Dad, it's not just, absent-minded professor. You just asked that question 5 minutes ago and you totally forgot.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my gosh, really? Okay, so mild cognitive impairment. And now we can do some testing, some cognitive testing, neuropsych testing, a MOCA test, a many mental status exam test, an MMSE. So now it's becoming medical. But the scary part is there's no drugs for this. And the quote unquote war on dementia, Alzheimer's, the investment into drugs for Alzheimer's is a really good example of the catastrophic failure of the American medical approach. We've got some great successes with cancer, some great successes with heart disease. In fact, we were wrong a couple of shows ago where we said the death rate of heart disease is going down, but then I think we said, but the incidence of hypertension, high cholesterol, all those kind of things are still going up. We just have better medicines.
I was going to say, we're just better at a life
Band-aiding,
support
that's
and
right.
keeping somebody going. It doesn't mean
Still, well, not even life support. They're still functioning.
well, medical support,
Sure.
support.
You
So
need the medical crutches
yeah,
to keep you.
So we're still getting sicker, but medicine is getting better at keeping
yeah,
you
staying
alive while
longer.
you're sick.
Sure.
Which yeah.
Now back over here to the brain though, and we've got Aricept and Namenda, two medicines, and they all, now some docs will argue they themselves fail. They halt the decline in some people, but we cannot figure out which people it's going to work in and which people, and it makes some people worse.
But regardless, we're talking about a medicine that shouldn't be needed because,
that's right.
Okay. Is it fair to take these? Because we started off with fitness and now we're talking about brain stimulation. Are those our primary two legs for this?
Let me go back to your novelty.
Well,
no. And here's
okay.
why. So how do you then protect your brain? How do you invest in your brain? And what if you start seeing mild cognitive impairment? What if the family starts saying, we're right now, they just laugh it off because that's what we do. Just like we laugh off the 20 extra pounds around our middle, or I can't run a mile because my knees hurt, or well, I guess I'm middle-aged, this happened to my dad, and all of these other things that we talk about in all our shows. So yeah. Don't laugh that off. Now is the time to invest in your brain even harder. And so how do you do that? What are the pillars? Certainly exercise is going to be one of them. Certainly novelty and investment in the brain. I want to come back to that one. But sleep, my goodness, this one is a huge one. And most of us have been in our professional lives from 25 to 65 on a 6 or even less than 6 to less than 7 hours average.
Okay.
To get things done. And I would say, well, then you should expect dementia. And those people aren't exercising. Well, you should expect dementia. And those people aren't investing in novelty. You should expect dementia. And here we are, where the culture around us, like you said at the beginning, now expects it.
Okay. So so then go ahead and hit genetics.
Okay. Now genetics, in this case, we have to mention because it's something that we can actually measure and recognize. So let me use the example of Caucasian skin. So here we are, and maybe you're a half degree fairer than me. So we would say, okay, you're that much more likely to have a sunburn. Genetically, you and I would go outside and 30 minutes earlier, you've got to put on your sunscreen than me. Or if we got a friend who's an Indian guy, then they never have to use this stuff. Or if we got a friend over here who's got porcelain skin, they never go outside without it.
Yeah.
That is a genetic reality. And everybody has a different lifestyle choice of wear a hat, don't go outside without sunscreen. That is a lifestyle thing that everybody out there automatically does without thinking, because that's something we can see. How am I a white guy, a black guy? What do I have to do? Okay. Everybody out there has an APOE status. So this is apolipoprotein E status. And what is that genetically? Everybody, just like you have a color of your skin, which is related to how much melanin is in your skin, that is genetically pre-programmed. You don't have a lifestyle thing around that. You respond with your lifestyle.
Right.
So everybody pre-programmed is an APOE4. And then now you have to say from the parents. So a 4-4, or there's 3 and then there's 2. So the combinations of 4-3 or 4-2 or 3-3 or 3-2. And so there's those various combinations. If you're a 4, then you have an increased risk of Alzheimer's. If you're a 4-4, that's a 15% chance right off the bat, statistically. But
Okay.
let's go back to skin.
Right.
Kevin, you're that much more whiter than me. We could give a statistical number. Let's use 15%. You're 15% chance more likely to get into sunburn than me. Does that mean that you're going to have to get a sunburn tomorrow? Mm-mm. Does it mean that your lifestyle choices have no bearing on whether or not you get a sunburn?
I was going to say, our adjustment towards it is different.
You have 100% control over how you live tomorrow. This is what freaks people out.
I was going to say, so what was the measurement?
APOE. So apolipoprotein E. This is cholesterol. This is one of the cholesterols.
But to exaggerate it, I would kind of say it for myself, I don't care what it is.
Okay. Because well, hang on.
Either way, if I'm going to do that,
I would debate with you. Yes,
but if I'm going to do the things to ward off,
that's right. Dementia, you're going to do them anyway.
Hopefully. Yeah,
that's right. But let's just say you're a 4-4. Okay. Now, you have an added vested interest.
The highest propensity.
That's right. Because what you don't do in your life is mindfulness and meditation. If you're a 4-4,
but if over here, if health, perfection is over here, theoretically, we both want to strive to doing the absolute perfection. Agree. But what you're saying is, if I have the worst propensity, I should just have more motivation to get closer to perfect than you do. But either way, we should still be both.
I would agree. Yeah. But knowing something like that, we already know
is a better motive. We're just back to motive.
That's right.
Which is my other podcast. Find motive wherever you get your podcast. Exactly. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
So a few years ago, people were scared. They're like, I don't want to know, because it's like, is it predisposition? Or predestination?
That's angering to not want to know.
I would agree. To me, it's burying the head in the sand. It's an unwise posture.
I don't want to know my death date necessarily. We had this in some question. Right. Would you like to know? I don't know if I want to know the day that I die, but I want to know all the things that are going to possibly get me there quicker that I can be warding off.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one of those things would be, because you already know many, many genetic things. You're a white guy. In case you didn't know that, you're a white guy.
Well, let's be literal. My dad is in the hospital right now for prostate
you have a family history
surgery.
Of prostate.
And he says his dad had it. He says, I got to talk to you boys about your propensity.
Now, if we had a genetic marker that was related to prostate or whatever else, we could measure that and say, oh, wow, you're 33% more likely than the average Joe. And then, where I would go, I would say, Kevin, you can't, or you ought not miss the medicine of fasting. You need to clean out the prostate, so to speak, using the tool of fasting. If we knew, well, now you do know that based on a family history. Mm-hmm. And in medically speaking, we take a family history. Now, we've talked about this in the past too, nature versus nurture. The biggest, just because you're a white guy doesn't mean you're going to get skin cancer and whatever else. Now, you chose to bike for 5-8 hours on end out in the sun without sunscreen, and you're going to have an increased likelihood of stuff.
I do. Look at our faces and look at my spots.
Okay. You can't go back and relive 40 years ago, but you can make a change now to decrease the chances of skin cancer and all that kind of stuff in the future. Now we're back to the mind. So people out there, and I would say 23andMe, some of the other genetic studies, companies, Nebula, of all of the genetic studies that and LabCorp and Quest, it's $55 to know APO status.
I'm still back to the motive of this. We'd all be better off to just assume you have the worst propensity possible for dementia and live accordingly. Because if you get
that's not human nature.
I know, but it is absolute behavioral psychology to know that if I get the test back and it makes me shows the best result, I'm prone to be a little more lax. And give me a donut, man. I'm doing well. I mean, that is absolute human nature. I'd rather, yeah, I'd be better off. And now we're back into what we do most on this show, talk about not the specifics, but the psychology. I would be better to have all my tests done and for you to give me false information that says you're wrecked.
You're a wreck.
I mean, unless you just destroy me and I worry myself to death. But if I take it,
you know what you just said?
Huh?
We are better off to use the placebo effect.
Yes.
And I would agree, we probably are.
Yeah.
To lie to people.
You should tell every patient, oh my gosh, you're near death.
We're going to make a dent in
You need to
disease.
Fast, eat perfectly,
lie
exercise.
To everybody.
Because that's when the change happens. I mean, the person who is overweight and never does anything, never sticks with it, and puts it off, and then they have the heart attack, and then if you don't change, you're going to die, and they do. And generally,
where is the motivation of enough pain, enough fear, enough aspiration to do the other thing?
Okay, so on this dementia, so I was going to put it in. Okay, the first thing is be fit and well, but you're saying in some sense you should be, if I can say, you should be exercising and strengthening your body. Then the counter to that is you should be recovering. You said sleep. So we don't have to say that they're number 1 and 2 sequentially, but let's take those and say, obviously, can we just say obvious for the brain, the better shape your body is in physiologically is key. And we can say the same thing, stress. If you're sitting there, we've covered this so often. If you're sitting there, stress and worry and anxiety, you're increasing your rate of possibility for dementia. Genetics, we've hit that. You could have more propensity.
Let's leave nutrition, sleep, and exercise alone. Because hopefully everybody knows.
That's what I was trying to do.
Right. Now, more specifically into the brain.
That's what I was trying to do. Okay. Let's say that now I want to talk about stimulation.
That's right.
Part of that's my own bias because I think I'm doing a lot of the fit well stuff.
You are.
Good. But what if I am?
Well, you don't do the mindful part, the mindfulness, meditation, breathing.
You're right.
We're going to talk about that in a couple of shows here. But novelty. So when people say, okay, what's the best exercise for my brain? You know what the best novelty is? It's for us, it's to have a wife. And the old joke of they change their mind. Well, that's great for your brain.
My wife absolutely stimulates my brain.
There you go.
Trying to have a cohesive, a healthy relationship.
There you go. Tonight, bring her some flowers and say thank you for changing your mind all the time.
Yeah.
Can you do that some more?
That's good.
Okay. And by that, I mean relationship, which is our fourth cornerstone, right? That as a part of healing and wellness is relationship, your own relationship with yourself, and then your spouse, with God, with the world around you, how you engage in it. And that's why the worst examples of nursing homes or jail is terrible, because it talk about pruning the bush. I mean, that's taking a hacksaw to it. If you pull back relationships, this is why when a spouse dies, so often the next spouse dies. So it's just a hacksaw to the brain. And this is why solitary confinement is so painful. And it's torture. So relationships is novelty to the brain. And this is why a toxic relationship is a hacksaw to the brain. Because it needs to be stimulating and loving and trust and all of those things. You've got to see that as fuel for a healthy brain. And so, children, the ACEs score, if you're raised in a horrible environment, that relationship is hacksawing a child's brain. You can't recover if a branch gets cut off at 8, it doesn't regrow. And that's the ACEs score.
Yeah.
And so over here, the 40, 50, 60-year-old, and you're starting to think, my goodness, there's something going on. It doesn't mean to go buy Sudoku and crosswords and things like that. It means nutrition, exercise, sleep, relationships, and then idea of novelty. Okay, so what else? Now people want to know, okay, I got it, but what's concrete? Well, this is where the famous examples are of learn a new language. That's just so new for the brain. Like for me, and I retire, and I think I would really, like to pick up German again and maybe do some Greek and Hebrew, those kind of things. Learn a new language. Go to a new town. Just throw a dart on the map. And for us, for Marcy and I, and we loved, let's just pick a town in wherever Germany and go explore. Figure out how to ride the subway.
Well, you just said the word. I just wrote it out. Figure out, because
Yeah. Figure
figure.
is novelty.
I want to ask you about the delineation between learning, because my thought is if I learn something, if I go learn about the nuances of traveling to France and living
Yep.
there, and I learn, okay, so
Yep.
there's some
Yep.
brain
You're learning.
stimulation. I've got to think that the value of that is so much less than going there and figuring it out. I mean, as far as the brain stimulation to actually to go beyond learning and doing to
Do it.
figure
Yeah.
something out.
Let me bring in the physical. Okay. So the physical learning, learn a new sport, learn a new talent. So music, huge.
Well, I remember my son, my oldest son,
Yeah.
Caleb, when he was dealing with brain stuff, they had him, they
Trampoline.
advocate. Exactly.
Yep. I remember that. I tell that story a lot too, that the most valuable thing that he could do was trampoline. And then as he was on the trampoline, it was pat your head, rub your tummy, and be on the trampoline and do this. Remember?
And now go back. So we just did, this is show 66, I think 65 or 64 was with Dr. O'Neill talking about, fit. And here we are again. And we know that as you get older, you talk about Parkinson's, you start to protect your body. Oh, it hurts my knees. My knees ache
Right.
when I've
So
been
I'm
down.
not going to use my
So I'm not
knees.
going to bend down. I'm going to, everything that hurts, I'm going to
protect.
I'm going to protect.
And you shrink.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that balance, oh, now, skiing requires balance, and I don't have the balance I used to. So we don't do that. And you're saying we should be doing the opposite. I'd be better off to start learn. I can't do a cartwheel.
Here's my example. In our family a few years ago, we got young kids, so that helps keep us young. And here's a great example of, they brought home a ripstick.
Mm-hmm.
Have you done the ripstick yet? You guys have gravel, so you really can't.
Well, the kids do it in the house, but I haven't messed with it much.
You should.
Okay.
Why? Because
it's going to train.
That's right. And so it was so interesting. Now I would put myself, I had skateboarded as a kid. My wife really hadn't. She's an athlete, but I learned it faster than she did. Ryder, who was 12-ish at the time, 10-ish at the time, learned it super quick. But this 8-year-old, he was so mad that he couldn't get it. Mm-hmm. And then the 5-year-old at the time couldn't get it at all. And then we just watched the development of that. But for me, it was like that afternoon, a few hours of wiggle and fall, wiggle, fall, wiggle, fall. And finally you get it. Here's another one. Have you ever seen the guys that flip the pins?
Yeah. Don't you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can do that.
Yeah.
But it took 1,000 drops. But I bet, but with me doing it with my right, I can do it with my left faster than you can begin with your right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So that's right. So the brain learns how to learn. And when you combine it with physical, so not just reading about Paris and imagining yourself being there, but you've actually got to.
So I should put the headphones on and learn a language while ripsticking.
Well, this is the absolute danger of Oculus, of virtual reality, because now you can put those things on your eyeballs. You are in Paris, and you save.
But there's no way I can get the same benefit.
I would agree.
From learning to ripstick
versus ripsticking on an Oculus. I would agree. I do think that within virtual reality we won't talk about that today, but that's coming in the future and it's going to be harmful to humanity. But anyway,
how can it not?
How can it not be? Okay. Novelty and learn a new language. Great one. Music. Great one. Pick up the piano. But then a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, the Mount Everest of learning how to do that. So what else? So
I had a friend a long time ago who was dealing with some mental health issues and OCD propensities and whatnot. And I'll never forget, because it was so interesting to me. She lived in LA, so it was easy to do this. The counselor said, I want you to drive home from work different way every single day, which just about ripped her apart. She had figured out the perfect way.
Right.
And
now it's going to cost 37 seconds more to go around this way and that way.
And the effort to figure it out. And there may be something different. And I'm not used to that, but that was part of her training from a mental health standpoint. And we're here on that same aspect.
So one of the other things I wanted to be sure and bring up today, dementia in the relationship to TBI, traumatic brain injury. So just like if I cut your skin right here, there will be a scar. So if you get a concussion, and now there's various degrees of that, but if there's traumatic brain injury, there's a scar in your brain. Kind of think about it like that. Yeah. Automatic increasing risk. Multiple concussions, more risk. So for people out there who have had concussion, I mean, this is the football players, the movie
Mhm.
concussion and CTE, chronic traumatic encephalitis,
Yeah.
absolute increased risk. So this goes back to, if you know that and you're an APO4
Oh.
and you sleep 6 hours a night, you're asking for dementia.
Well, I just want to clarify the concussion aspect, because when people hear about that, they think about the football player or the car accident, or think where you got a literal big ticket concussion. And the CTE, which
Right.
was the movie concussion with Will Smith that talked about kind of the advent of that coming to light, was looking at football players, and they weren't talking about the big hit concussion. They were talking about the
Chronic
little
daily, all
daily,
the
yeah,
time.
which
That's right.
can happen with kids in soccer and
Yep.
with people. I don't know what other, but I want people to hear that if you've had some
Here's what I would
mild,
say.
consistent
Yeah.
hits to the head,
Let's just talk about humans, because most everybody's had a head bump.
yeah,
Okay.
the
So
playground,
that's right. Playground, all those kind of things. And then the distinction would be to anybody out there. So I ask in the clinic, was there ever a head bonk to the point of loss of consciousness? If the answer is yes,
yeah.
then consider that almost like having a grandma who had Alzheimer's. Like, you've got
Oh, okay.
risk.
So
Kevin, are you Caucasian?
Yeah.
Yes. You need to pay attention to the sun. I don't care what your opinion is, pay attention. If you've had a head bonk, did you ever?
Mhm.
You had a loss of consciousness?
Mhm.
So you've got increased risk. And because of that, I would say even more so know your APO4, because it's synergistic or cumulative risk.
Do we not know mine? Have I not done that?
I don't think so,
Okay.
because I don't
That's
encourage
not
people
it's
to
not
use Quest and LabCorp, because I would say go spend the same amount of money and get 23andMe and all that kind of stuff. Now you get too much information,
yeah.
and you need some help to kind of digest that and what does it mean and all that kind of stuff. So it's a different thought process. We need to do a show on genetics, because that's a whole different language, and it gets very confusing. But APO4 is a little bit less confusing. It's more concrete. If you're a 4 from one parent, then it's about a 5% increased chance. If you're a 4-4, meaning a 4 from both parents, 15% chance. Now, if you have a 4-4 and a concussion, then you just, right, like it would be, you just need to make yourself meditate.
Well, and this is the back to the statement of genetics loads the gun.
That's right.
Lifestyle pulls the trigger. So if
you're born a 4-4 and you lifestyled as a biker and got a head concussion, you pulled the trigger.
Well, but I was to say, I want us to use a different term than just genetics. Your genetics, and why? Because you just said concussion is not my genetics, but I've got.
But what I call antecedents, meaning your genetics is what came before.
Right.
And if you were born into a family of smokers, if you were born into a toxic family and there was a divorce, the adverse childhood event kind of thing, if you were born into, these are all the things that genetics and everything that culture.
So genetics, you're saying my antecedents
yeah,
are literal genetics, like my familial history, but it's also a concussion.
Yeah. Yes. And whether you smoked as a kid, if you smoked as a kid, that's an antecedent. If you still smoke, we call it a mediator. You're still mediating this badness or stupidness. Yeah.
Right.
If you still mountain bike.
Yeah.
Are you going to call it stupid?
No.
Well, okay.
Well, what the heck kind of correlation is that? You got to
dumb.
A life-giving.
Life is risk. Now you choose not to do the risk of smoking.
Yeah.
Because remember, we said sometimes I don't want the guy to quit smoking because he's going to kill his wife if he does. It's like, let's just make you the best smoker possible. We're going to make you the best biker possible by you better wear a helmet.
I want to qualify that, because if anybody hears that and you haven't heard other shows, if you're new to listening or something, because it's really, I like that when you have a patient come in who has XYZ problems and this acute manifestation of a pathology, and you look at all the things and go, oh my gosh, you're doing, all these wrong things. You can't just hit them with, oh my gosh, 180.
Change everything in your life and become perfect.
Because it's probably not going, you're going to say, okay, well, you may ask them, you want to take baby steps, you want to take a big step, whatever, but you literally have had patients. It's been a while, I think.
I will tell them, you're not ready to quit smoking.
You're not ready to quit smoking.
You're going to fail.
The thing that's hurting you most right now is
you hate your job.
Or you're living on Pop-Tarts or whatever. Let's fix that first. We'll get to smoking.
Yeah.
But right now it may be the lesser of all evils.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. And so So yeah, biking, but you would never not wear a helmet, right? But some people out there are like, whatever, and yada yada. And well, our kids, like it's
Yeah.
and Marcy said, look, I don't care if you're just riding down the hill, put a helmet on. It's a rule.
God,
We grew up without
I
seatbelts.
say that because, I was a pro cyclist. The amount of miles that I put in because I came into it at the advent of helmets.
Well,
They were
skiing.
they were in the Tour
Yeah.
de France with no
With
helmets,
no helmets
back then.
It just looks.
So
It looks weird.
I did a
now.
lot of miles even after the helmets got imposed for racing, that I did not do it.
Well, and you probably
training.
thought when the helmets first came out, I'm not doing that.
Oh, we all did. That's stupid.
Stupid.
Pansies.
The people skiing with these helmets on, and I thought they must be really bad skiers.
Dude, I did not wear a helmet last time I skied. One of my kids said something about it. I just.
Well, if you don't value your brain, don't invest in a helmet.
I don't ski very fast. I was out yesterday on trails, and some of that, I will say that just on the novelty and the movement, because as a pro, now I was a cyclist on the road, and you can go out on the road and ride 100 miles and it's a straight line, man. I can zone out, and you're not doing that much. You can do that, and it's not doing much for my brain and my body. It's just kind of, you get your legs and quads and whatever. I do dig mountain biking, and I like seeing older guys out there too. I came upon some older ladies. I mean, they had to have been past 70, if not older, mountain biking.
Right.
And this is a pretty good trail where, you're balancing, or you're not to your death, but if you fall over, you're going to get hurt, man. It's a big drop off over there, and you're trying to get over, rock stuff. I love the novelty of that. You can't not be mentally present.
I was going to say, you guys say it's 2 hours that I'm not thinking about anything else.
Yeah.
I
have to be right there. Sometimes I'll think I should be looking at the horizon, but if I do, I'm going to
that's right.
eat it because there's a rock. Yeah.
It's that novelty and a flow state. Yeah. We talk about a flow state where you're in the zone.
Yeah.
That the biochemistry of that is flourishing to the bush. That newness. So I wrote down some other things because, Kevin, this is one of the times when our time is limited. But holy cow! So we talked about family history and genetics. Your brain, so glucose and insulin. Dementia we can justify this phrase, is a version of type 3 diabetes.
Okay.
So
again, this is show 66. We just did one. I don't have it in front of me on diabetes. If you didn't hear that, go listen. It's in the 60s. Episodes.
Too much glucose over too long.
Okay.
Right. And so your brain is one of the organs. If you choose to bathe it in glucose with the average of 6 meals a day, mostly carbs in America, average, getting close to more than 50% of people are eating more than 5 times a day. You are asking for dementia. Your brain cannot sustain normal existence when there's so much glucose percolating around all the time. It has to defend itself.
Okay.
And glucose and insulin are inflammatory, and the defense is what equals, if anybody out there knows anything about Alzheimer's, and about the plaques and the tangles and the beta amyloid and the protein, that is a defense mechanism of the brain. The brain is defending itself. And the consequence of that defense is what you call dementia. It is not, shame on this beta amyloid. Why is it there? It's there because you're living the life that's asking it to be there.
Isn't an acute treatment for, if you got that coming, would you say fast and keto-ish?
Yes. If somebody already knows, well, let's just say if you're overweight, well then you've already had by proxy. Yes. And if you are skinny fat, then, and you start to understand the insulin glucose, and if you're ready to make a change, then yes, understand intermittent fasting and prolonged fasting. And yes, understand keto. And I don't propose that everybody should be in keto all the time, but I think dipping in and out of keto in the rhythm.
Even if you say the 80-20, the 80% of the time you're keto-ish, and and when you are having carbs, it's the best you can have. It's whole grain. It's
that, and we've talked about many shows on how to balance that out. So So those are the main things. I would get APO status. I would check MTHFR status as well. I think that
you said that's a MTHFR.
Yeah, the mother father gene, or the other way to irreverently say it. Right. But people think about that. That has to do with how your body is defending itself. inflammation response.
All right.
So if somebody's an APO4, if they're MTHFR positive down the bad kind of a pathway, it's like saying somebody's a very Caucasian white person. They need to have more precautions to not get skin cancer or sunburn.
Yeah.
If people have had TBI, they're overweight, their insulin's high, their glucose is high, they sleep 6 hours a night, they don't like their job, they're living in rote world. This is what is going to destroy you're pruning back the brain. And when you make a little snip there, that's when dad or Kevin says, wait, we just talked about what we ate last night? I don't even remember. And everybody's looking at you like, we just talked about 5 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you say, oh my gosh, I was totally thinking about, Snoopy over here, great, that makes sense. But if they say, you just told us what you ate last night and you can't, now something got snipped there. And that's what Alzheimer's is we can't connect time, spatial awareness. You walk into the kitchen and not only did you forget why you're there, but you don't know what the kitchen's for, or you go to your bedroom to make a sandwich and people are living with this and it's just heartbreaking. So as we close out today, I think.
Well, I want to say, I mean, we talked about genetics and obviously you can't change those. You can respond accordingly, though, to a degree. It's just a better motivation to do.
It's wisdom
to reach towards the perfect state that we would try to get to. Exercise, obviously, good nutrition, obviously, especially anti-inflammatory type nutrition. But
sleep.
The one and sleep and then recovery, the one that we can all instigate and audit whether we're doing or not today and instill fairly easily is novelty.
Yeah.
Again, think of the brain. What is your brain not only learning, but I like the figuring out, because you don't just learn a language.
In the treehouse last summer. That was great.
What?
Building the treehouse.
Oh.
Figuring out the treehouse. That's a great example.
Yeah, I love doing that.
Yeah.
Or just sitting back and figuring that out. But whatever that is, because even you may learn new information. You can't learn the information of a new language and do it. You have to figure out how to get your brain to execute this.
Express.
I mean, it's such a yeah. And I've never. Well, I did it once, but we can all
learn
do novelties,
the language of music, the language of athletics, the language of a new relationship, of those kind of things.
I love the physiological aspect you put in there of getting your body to learn to do a cartwheel, do some burpees, do some balance, do dance, twirl around, and just get your mind rebounding.
All of those things are great things to invest in.
Can you imagine with dementia? You got a parent or yourself, early dementia, get on a trampoline.
Yeah.
Go to a park where it's safe and there's pads and do it a little bit. But yeah.
All right.
There we go.